Good morning, everybody, and a very warm welcome to Paul Ricard for the second qualifying session of the weekend for the GT Cup Open Europe. As the field taking to the circuit, they've got a 20-minute qualifying session that will set the grid for this, the second ever race of this new for 2019 category. And yesterday we were treated to a very entertaining race that was claimed by Hans-Peter Koller, in the end driving single-handedly at the wheel of the Vincenzo Sospiri Racing Lamborghini, which, for the purposes of qualifying this morning, it would, at least our timing screen says it's in the hands of Edoardo Liberati, but Liberati didn't appear yesterday, so I guess we will find out in due course whether or not Hans-Peter Koller is doing it all single-handedly once more, as we have a look at the Porsche of Philip Toykens. So the GT Cup Open Europe is a new category which basically pits the cars that you might see racing in the Porsche Cup, the Lamborghini Super Trofeo, and other entry points into GT racing against each other in a multi-mark environment. It's a new initiative, and on the basis of yesterday, it has the potential to be a very, very popular one. We've got 5 different marks represented this weekend, and they were all going wheel to wheel for the bulk of yesterday's race. So it was Hans-Peter Koller who took the victory. The runner-up was the sister Vincenzo Sospiri Racing Lamborghini of Rodolfo Toni and JP Mauro, and they chased Koller all the way to line with Nicky Leutwiler, the man we're watching now in the white, red and black Porsche, finishing in 3rd position. Leutwiler having been in the thick of the action throughout much of yesterday's race. But, of course, today is a new day. As you join us, it is a chilly morning here. The Paul Ricard circuit was very, very windy on and off through the night. It's still a stiff breeze today, which will make for interesting conditions for the drivers, one would imagine, as the 17-card field all looking to start to take to the circuit. The other driver who was fast yesterday but didn't quite make it to the podium in the end, grinding to a halt a couple of laps before the checker flag, was Glauco Solieri in the Antonelli Motorsport Lamborghini Huracan, and Solieri carving up through the field throughout the course of the race. This is one of the brace of Teo Martin Motorsport McLaren 570Ss, and the number 7 car, which is the blue car, in the hands of Marc de Fulgencio and Thiago Vivacqua, and the number 18 car, which is the red car, in the hands of Guilherme Pujol and Faust Salom, and it's the latter who is qualifying for this session. It's Marc de Fulgencio negotiating the opening section on the lap before accelerating out towards turns 4 and 5. That will then sweep him round to the Mistral straight, as Nicky Leutwiler also beginning just to get a little bit of temperature into the Michelin tyres. They all run on a control Michelin tyre. With 20 minutes to play with, they'll take a couple of laps to get the heat into the tyres before they then press on with some quick times. Good to see Pierre Martinet out on track just ahead of Rodolfo Toni. The one car that we lost yesterday was Fernando Navarrete, and Navarrete not yet out on track at the wheel of his Porsche, one of the 2 Mercedes in the race, and that is Fernando Fortes in the 360 Racing Team Mercedes. However, it was Guilherme Salas in the Sports & U Mercedes who was the real star of the second half of the race yesterday, absolutely flying, and I think we would potentially look to see Salas there. He is in a position where he will be challenging for pole position. It's the car of Carlo Curti, and Lino and Carlo Curti both great value during the course of yesterday's race. And what we saw, particularly in the first half of the race before the mid-race pit stops, was some very, very close wheel-to-wheel dicing. So when we do go racing later, it's going to be a 55-minute race. There will be, of course, the mandatory pit stop that comes midway through, as well as we follow the progress of the Baporo Motorsport Porsche of Home Font. As he navigates on to the Mistral straight. This is the, I believe not sister car in the Baporo Motorsport team, but it is the Audi R8 of Daniel Diaz Varela that he is sharing with Manuel Secada, and they were, again, right up there in the mix yesterday. So the number 6 Vincenzo Spree Racing Lamborghini goes and sets the first fast time of the session. Eduardo Liberati is down as our driver for now. We'll confirm whether or not that proves to be the case after yesterday. Faust Salom pursuing him, currently second, but these are just the first laps of the session, so there is not a huge amount really that we can read into it. Now, based on yesterday's qualifying session, we're looking for a high 2-minute 8-second, low 2-minute 9-second lap in order to set the time of pole position. So that first time from the number 6 Lamborghini for 2-minute 12.9, we know that there is a fair bit more ground to come. So we've got 16 cars currently circulating on track, and just looking, trying to pick out from the helmet whether or not that is Hans-Peter Koller or Eduardo Liberati. And the Lamborghini absolutely flying nonetheless. This, the fastest first sector of the session, fastest second sector, and currently 2.5 seconds up on the previous lap. So that is going to be putting us into a mid 2-minute 10-second bracket, although, of course, the third and final sector on the lap generally lasts a fair bit longer, so we would presume that further time is to be gained. Good conditions, though, this morning. Once they get the heat into the tyres, it's a really crisp morning here in Paul Ricard. Slight threat of rain possibly for a little bit later on today, but for now, enjoying the conditions, as it certainly does appear, I think, to be Eduardo Liberati at the wheel as he comes through to reel off the lap. Nicky Leutwiler is just on 2 minutes 10.694, and that is a 2 minutes 8.584, and that is the quickest time we have seen this weekend in the GT Cup Open Europe. And so Eduardo Liberati moves into a provisional pole position. And I think the real battle is going to be between Liberati and Salas for pole. Nicky Leutwiler then in second, Faust Salom in third, John de Wilde did the whole race single-handedly yesterday in fourth, ahead of Carlo Curti. Here is Nicky Leutwiler. And Leutwiler, personal best through the first sector. The second sector is essentially the bulk of the Mistral Straight, which is where the Porsche is now, as Glauco Solieri moves up into second position, 2 minutes 10.228. So Leutwiler needs to find best part of half a second to reclaim his provisional place on the front row of the grid. Buries his throttle. Coming towards the end of the second sector now. And Leutwiler making personal improvement, but against Solieri's lap as a whole, Leutwiler is still just a little bit adrift of moving up into that second position. Meanwhile, Glauco Solieri is on a good lap in the Antonelli Motorsport Lamborghini. He's just done the fastest first sector of anybody. Still waiting for Guilherme Salas to show his hand. And there you see Solieri up on Liberati by about 1/10 of a second through the first sector. Headlights ablaze on the Porsche of Nicky Leutwiler as he navigates his way through all a little bit of a wobble there from Leutwiler, but he's able to recover it without any drama. Plants the throttle and accelerates on his way. And Leutwiler improves his time, not his grid position. So he improves by about 1/10 of a second. Now here is Solieri, and Solieri is on the cusp here of what promises to be a pretty decent lap, but a lap, I fear, for him, that is going to be overshadowed by the progress of Guilherme Salas fairly rapidly. But for now, the Antonelli Motorsport Lamborghini is in the final sector. Solieri was great value yesterday, really pushing and charging through the field. He was the quickest man, of course, in free practice on Friday. Solieri picks his his way through the final corner, accelerates onto the start and finish straight. Let's see what he's going to do. Guilherme Salas, meanwhile, is up through both the first two sectors. As over the line now comes Glauco Solieri, and that is good enough still for second place. 2 minutes 8.779. And there is the Sports and New Mercedes of Guilherme Salas, the car that he shares with Marcio Basso. Salas into the final turn as well, and this promises to be a lap in the 2 minute 7 second bracket for Guilherme Salas. So let's see what he can do. And he takes provisional pole position, a 2 minute 7.604 for the Brazilian. Really impressive lap. Well, we saw this all the way through the second half of the race yesterday, that Salas was eating chunks of time out of his rivals. So he moves into pole position. Liberati then in second, third to Solieri, fourth to Carlo Curti, fifth Nicky Leutwiler, sixth to Faust Salom, seventh to Marc de Fulgencio, eighth is John de Wilde, although that has changed because Home Fonts moved up into eighth, Fernando Fortes into ninth, and Daniel Diaz Varela into 10th place. This lap a little bit adrift to his best from Guilherme Salas. Liberati, meanwhile, is also looking to improve, and Liberati, white Vincenzo Spiri Racing Lamborghini, currently in the final sector of the lap, and it's now Liberati who goes quickest to 2 minutes 7.448. So he takes pole position by just over a tenth of a second, and this is rather what we were expecting to see, that two of the pro drivers in the Pro-Am class moving to the fore of the field. Here are the brace of Teo Martin Motorsport McLarens, and the fastest of those is currently Faust Salom, the man we watch, and he is in 5th position. With then Marc de Fulgencio currently in 8th place. And Fulgencio just pushing a little bit too hard there. It's turn 4 and 5, the car squirming underneath him. But the two teammates may be flying in formation for the benefit of a tow, as Faust Salom completely backs out of his lap. But Fulgencio continues on his way. Fernando Fortes goes up into 8th position. Nicky Leutwiler currently chasing an improvement. And Fulgencio, if he's able to stay within half a second of the Liberati pole position mark, then that is going to be good enough to move him up into 3rd on the grid. But he's had to navigate the Mistral straight without the benefit of any tow. Nonetheless, it's still his best first couple of sectors. And the pace of Liberati and Salas has rather detonated the rest of the field. They're all about a second or so adrift of what the pace setters have been able to do. Guilherme Salas, meanwhile, is back onto another quick lap. Salas, fastest first sector of anybody in the session, with just 6 minutes remaining, so they've got time for maybe 3 more laps, certainly 2. Marc de Fulgencio should move up to the 2nd or 3rd row of the grid on the basis of this effort. Out of the final turn he comes. And he accelerates along the start and finish straight, past the pit wall, and goes 5th with a 2 minutes 10.063, 2.6 seconds away from pole position. And this is the man who is trying to wrestle back pole position, Guilherme Salas, in the Sports and New Mercedes. Salas, he's got the track space as he comes through the Courbe d'Issy. No traffic in front of him, just fighting the car that wants to wash out away from him through turn 11, the double apex right-hander, before they pick their way back uphill into the left-hander for Guilherme Salas. Eduardo Liberati also on an improved lap as well. So this is going to be absolutely fascinating to see who prevails. Salas is going to be the first driver to set a lap time. Into the final right-hander now. Plants his right foot, accelerates along and over the line. for Guilherme Salas, and he goes quickest to 2 minutes 6.974 for Salas. But I rather fear that pole position mark is not going to last for too long, because Edoardo Liberati is also flying. That's Liberati, here he is, who has been quickest through the first two sectors, but he has got some traffic in the form of Pierre Martinet just in front of him. Martinet sees him, moves aside, and that's good, polite driving from Pierre. And so that is going to give Liberati the chance now to have a clear run in terms of traffic through to the end of the lap. Meanwhile, Salas, however, has wound up for another lap. He is quicker than anybody through the first sector on his next lap. A couple of tenths of a second, 4 minutes to run. Liberati through the final turn. Waiting for him to come past us, and he goes fastest at 2 minutes 6.480. So it's now Liberati who is fastest to the tune of some half a second, and Guilherme Salas has got to wrestle further improvements still from the Sports and New Mercedes. He's coming towards the end of the second sector now, and he's a tiny bit adrift here, Guilherme Salas, 33 thousandths of a second. But a lap ago, he was just a little bit untidy through the Courbe du Cygne. That looked a bit neater, and the Mercedes certainly, oh, he runs wide into turn 11, tiny bit off the road. The Mercedes, again, it looked like it had hooked up a little bit better on the way in, but it just understeered out wide. Now, how much has that cost Guilherme Salas? The problem here for the Brazilian being that even if he improves his time, he needs to make an improvement just shy of 6/10 of a second in order to move up to pole position. If anything, that lap possibly went away from him a little bit. He's got time for 2 more rolls of the dice, tyre window permitting here. So across the line comes Salas, and yep, that lap somewhat aborted in the end, 2 minutes 8.167. Liberati not in a quick lap either. Now, here is a big moment for Nicky Leutwiler. Around he goes. Looks like that's over at turn 6. And Leutwiler, yesterday's third place finisher, currently 6th, with behind the Liberati and Salas pole battle. It's Glauco Solieri in 3rd, Rodolfo Toni in 4th. In 5th is Fernando Fortes. In 6th, Nicky Leutwiler. 7th, Marc de Fulgencio. 8th, Faust Salom. 9th, Carlo Curti. And 10th is John de Wilde, with 11th, Daniel Diaz Varela. Michele Merendino in 12th, ahead of Philip Toykens in 13th, Homefont 14th, Cedric Mazar in 15th, Pierre Martinet in 16th. Unfortunately, the Fernando Navarrete Senior and Junior Porsche not making it out on track. So another lap to be reeled off here by Liberati. He will start the last lap of the session. And that he is staying out there suggests that he is possibly winding up for one more tilt and improving his time. So the Vincenzo Sospiri Racing team, yesterday they had pretty much the perfect start to their GT Cup Open Europe season with a 1-2. Seeking to do much the same again. Meanwhile, here is Guilherme Salas, and Salas through his nemesis turn 11. That looks better. But is that because he is going more slowly? Certainly not using every inch of the road on this occasion. And that possibly suggests a trip back towards the pits for the Brazilian. Edoardo Liberati, meanwhile, 0.2 of a second up on his best through Sector 1. Guilherme Salas, through the final turn he goes, and he could be winding this up for one last gasp tilt at pole position. He will have the opportunity here to trump Liberati. So across the line now goes Salas. What can the Sports and New Mercedes driver do? And that would be why the lap went away from it. Looked good through turn 11 because it had looked pretty wild through turn 10. So Salas has got another tilt at it. Liberati still pressing on. He's fractionally up on his best. Nicky Leutwiler as well, another driver looking for improvement as the checkered flag comes out. With the exception of Glauco Solieri, they're all circulating. They all clearly feel there is a little bit more to come. So Liberati's got a choice now, as to the team, to stick or twist. Does he continue with this lap and try and eke an improvement from it? Certainly the poise of the car suggests that's exactly what he's doing. Porpoising and bouncing on the suspension here, Edoardo Liberati, as he accelerates out of the final turn. The checkered flag goes out and greets the Italian, and it's not quite an improvement, but it's still a time that would have been good enough for pole position. Meanwhile, Guilherme Salas hasn't had another tilt at pole, so it looks very much as if the Vincenzo Superior Racing team have indeed claimed pole position. Nicky Leutwiler, that last lap we saw him on, has been good enough to see him clamber up to 5th place with a 2 minutes 9.234. So a thoroughly entertaining qualifying session for the GT Cup Open Europe. The last few cars all due to come across the line momentarily. The Vapouro Motorsport team, their 2 cars qualifying in 12th and 14th place respectively this morning. So maybe a little bit for them to tweak between now and the race this afternoon. When we do go racing this afternoon, it is going to be at 12:30 more or less Central European time, so do make sure that you join us for the second 55-minute race of the weekend in the GT Cup Open Europe. It is going to be pole position for Edoardo Liberati, just over half a second clear of Guilherme Salas, with whom he will share the front row. So look then at that final classification. Liberati to pole from Guilherme Salas. Then Glauco Solieri and Rodolfo Toni on row 2. Nicky Leutwiler and Fernando Fortes on row 3. Fausalom and Carlo Curti on the 4th row from Mark de Fulgencio and John de Wilde. So very multi-mark field to the top 10. 4 of the different marks represented, with just outside the top 10 Daniel Diaz Varela in the Vapouro Audi, just behind Michele Merendino, who didn't get to race yesterday. Then it's Daniel Diaz de Varela from Philip Toykens, Homefont, Cedric Mézard, Pierre Martinet, and unfortunately Fernando Navarrete not setting a time. So we will be back, our coverage starting 12:30 Central European time for the GT Cup Open Europe Race 2 from Paul Ricard. We'll see you then.